Thank you, everyone. So tonight we hope to talk about section 7, just get some initial feedback on that, and some direction on where we're headed, talk about the ADA evaluation that was done, and then start thinking about some of the other sections of the plan, looking at the goals and objectives, or the goals, the larger vision of the plan, which is section 6. So kind of doing those a little bit backwards, and maybe think about larger goals as well to help sort of structure the action plan. But first, we have sort of some slides to help us sort of organize and some talking points about the different parts of the agenda this evening. And I just want to make sure that I know I had just everything covered on that. I think we had one more item on there about talking about the next public event. And I think maybe we'll talk about that. I'm not if we're quite there yet, but we can get a temperature from everyone, how you feel where we're at. So with that, so our first item is the open space, or the ADA self-evaluation. And I'm gonna share my screen because, like I said, we have some slides. I'll just do the PowerPoint. And I'm gonna ask Kelly, she can walk us through that.
Thanks, Krista. And let me change up all my screen settings real quick. Okay. So ADA self-evaluation and transition plan, we just wanted to give you an update since there has been a substantial amount of progress on that. Just as a refresher, the ADA self-eval and transition plan, it's one of those appendices to the OSRP. And the intent of this is that it's evaluating how accessible conservation and recreation resources are across Wakefield's network of resources. The site assessments are done to identify areas for improvement, and then based on those site assessments, we kind of take those findings and create a transition plan. And so the overall goal is that this is advancing Wakefield as it looks to create opportunities to recreate for all residents, regardless of ability. It's okay if there are some areas or particular amenities that are not accessible. There will always be, site constraints that might prevent that, but there must be those accessible opportunities within Wakefield's overall system. And so just for background, this is specific in what it's covering. It's only related to Recreation Department and Conservation Commission facilities that have public access and that have existing amenities. So there are some sites where, the Concom owns it, but there's not public access. So we wouldn't go and do a site assessment for that because folks aren't necessarily accessing that. So we completed these site assessments. One of our colleagues did earlier in the year. He went out in January and August. From those site assessments, again, we've kind of completed that draft self-evaluation where we're reviewing the site assessment findings and identifying areas for improvement. So at this point, we've kind of cataloged all potential items that we could recommend as potential improvements at these sites. And then we're kind of at the stage where we're going to bring it out to Wakefield boards and commissions. So we've actually already spoken with the Council on Aging and presented these findings to them, in addition to kind of talking to them about the OSRP in general. I think the big meeting that's coming up for us in November is the meeting with the Commission on Disabilities, and that will really dive deep into the plan and start looking at those action items and trying to think of which items should be prioritized for implementation sooner. And so that helps kind of place priorities and rankings in the transition plan. Krista, if you want to go to the next slide. Okay, so overall, I think there were very minor site recommendations that we found, and they generally fell into one of these 4 categories. There were a number of sites where straightforward improvements to parking spaces would meet accessibility requirements. So maybe that's installing signage at the right height, restriping, or installing curb cuts. There were a number of site recommendations related to walkways, making sure that the surfaces are smooth and clear, creating paths. Benches also came up, so having opportunities to sit that are accessible, making sure that those are located near accessible paths. And then there were a few playgrounds as well, where there were some potential improvements noted about playground surfaces, or making sure that there were kind of berm cuts into the playgrounds, but those are accessible. And again, our next step here is meeting with the Commission on Disabilities and then prioritizing those transition plan items for implementation. I will say that the self-evaluation and transition plan is looking at accessibility relative to specific requirements. We did hear from many stakeholders and town staff and residents about accessibility and inclusivity topics. And so many of those ideas have been incorporated into section 7, that needs piece, which Krista will touch upon as well. So with that, if there are any questions or comments, we can go over those now. Otherwise, we can keep moving forward.
I got a couple small ones to add in. So just looking through, Vetsfield didn't note that we're short handicap space. I believe we don't have a van space, and we're short one for the size of the parking lot. I know the Commission on Disabilities has already identified 2 other projects that you didn't have in the list. So I'd probably suggest adding those before you go. At JJ Round, they wanted an expansion of the path that goes to the playground, and they wanted to have accessibility to the benches that are there. So that's a project that we're already doing. So I'd suggest adding that one in. And then similar thing for Maple Way. They wanted to pave the gravel path that goes down there and provide accessibility to the there's a kind of a sitting table, like a what would you call it, like a picnic table. So they wanted to have that paved to that too. So just a couple of items that we had kind of already planned for that you probably want to add in.
Okay, good. That's great feedback.
Any other comments or, I'm assuming folks are welcome to join the meeting on the 6th, just to listen in or to participate as well, if you're interested.
I actually have a question. This is Charlie. I'm sorry if you hear some noises. I'm at my son's soccer practice, so you might hear that in the background. Fernald Field, is that town funded? Just from my knowledge, do we know if that's town funded, or does it have to go through the baseball groups? Does anybody know?
You were saying which field? I'm sorry.
Fernald, where Little League and T-ball takes place.
Yeah, that's all town. All of
That's
it's
town too. Okay.
Yeah, that'd be town.
Okay, so it's not donations or anything if they have to do anything to the fields.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect.
I'm pretty sure we maintain all of it.
Awesome. Okay, that was my question.
Charlie. All right. I think I'm just gonna set myself up a little bit better. Great. So just also adjusting my screen. Things are starting to overlap. Okay. The next thing we just wanted to touch on. So we had drafted section 7, which is the needs assessment. So we took pieces from, so we drafted that based on the workshop, the work from the master plan. We've had interviews with different town staff and just even meetings with you all. And so we put that together. And our ask of you tonight is really, are we hitting all the right issues? Are we talking about all of the issues? Are we talking about them in the right way? And what is missing? And if there are wordsmithing, we can work with you. You can send us text edits and what have you. But I think for tonight's purposes, I think we want to get a sense of if we're on the right track, or if we presented something that's that speaks to what you've heard and what and hopefully what we've encountered while we're meeting during our public engagement pieces. So there are 3 pieces of this section. So the first is resource protection needs, the second is community needs, and then management needs, which really reflects the town's ability to operate, maintain and operate facilities. So for the resource protection needs, we kind of had 3 areas of focus. So surface water quality, protecting habitat and wildlife corridors, and then resiliency as it speaks to climate resiliency and natural resources being resilient to help provide those benefits. Under surface water quality, we talked about the Lake Quannapoet and Crystal Lake, using nature-based solutions and green infrastructure to improve water quality, and just touching on the town's NIPDs, the National Pollutant Discharge Elimination System program permit, and just the requirements for that, and how that is supporting water quality. And I'll stop there if we wanted to touch on that one first and just kind of get your feedback on that particular, on that discussion. And are those the water quality issues that you want us to focus on, and what's missing?
Crystal Lake is a supplemental water source. It's not the primary.
Okay. And you can go ahead. I'm sorry, Bill, please go ahead.
Chrissy, you go ahead first.
No, I'm just saying we can take as many detailed edits as well. I just wanted to just reiterate that. But yes, please go, Bill, please.
No, I thought it was good. The only thing I'd probably add in is we did have a Clean Lake Committee that was charged, I want to say, 4 or 5 years ago. Ken actually sat on it with me. We identified a bunch of projects around Lake Q that I didn't see really noted anywhere in there.
Okay.
So there is a website on the town's site that I'm pretty sure it's still there. And we had like a bunch of projects around the lake that we identified, and we've been ticking those off with different pieces in Public Works. But that gives you kind of an idea of things we've already at least identified for improvements.
No, we will definitely highlight that. That's a great point. I'm just going back to make sure. I also have the document open so I can also make notes in there as I go. But yes, definitely, I think, and just to sort of reiterate that committee and that plan is still valid and you're still working on it. We can definitely
the committee's been disbanded, but we can
put
the website up there because we identify the projects. We've basically been, it honestly regurgitates the same stuff that you mentioned about kind of looking at the nature-based solutions, rather than in-water treatment. We really focused on that at the time. And like I said, we identified, I want to say like maybe 20 initiatives to look at. So that might be useful to at least reference or maybe add in. Up to you folks.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
No, thank you for that. Yes, we'll keep reference to that action plan. Great, thank you.
Can I add something?
Yes, please, John.
Hi. In section 2, establishing safe connections.
I haven't quite gotten there yet.
Okay, I'm premature. Sorry, I thought you were just opening it up.
I'm going to make a note though to come back to that.
Yeah.
Okay. Yes. Anything about water quality?
I have a question about that. We've been doing some water testing in Lake Quannapoet, and also in Crystal Lake. And one of the things that seems to be sort of a real key to it all is phosphate levels. And the phosphate levels vary greatly depending on the rainfall. So when it's been dry, phosphate levels can be fairly normal. And then when it rains, phosphate levels really spike up. And I was just wondering, is there been any consideration of what might be done to reduce the phosphate inflows?
I can grab that one if you'd like.
Good.
Yep. So yeah, so that's basically what we're doing around the lake right now. So we've started putting in these nature-based solutions. So the concept is basically that we have these kind of rain gardens, bioretention areas that do a couple of things. They filter the water that's going through, but then they have plants and whatnot inside of them that uptake the phosphorus and the nitrogen. So we, as part of the Clean Lake Committee, we identified a bunch of projects around the lake.
Right.
And, we've looked at, what, percentage of removal that we would get with these types of projects. We have a pretty large project that we're targeting for Main Street that would add a bunch of them there, consolidate outfalls and remove, I want to say about 60% of the phosphorus load from that side of the lake. So yeah, we're working on it, that I can tell you. So
Well, from the measurements that I've made, the inflow that comes right down Willard from the marsh on the opposite side of where the railroad comes through, on the other side of North Ave.
Yep.
Now that's a really reedy place. You got a lot of growth there.
Yep.
Yet when it rains, that outflow pipe just dumps right into Lake Quannapowitt, and the phosphorus, is off the chart.
Yeah, and that's because pretty much my guess is it's because of the golf course. Because it's all, if you look at that was a stream at one point, it's been disconnected in a bunch of spots, and it kind of goes in and out of 128, but it essentially has the headwaters sit right around the golf course at Bear Hill, and then kind of work its way down through different locations. But it's something that we've identified as well. But that would be sort of a phase 2. I think the first pieces are to look at the actual discharges coming into the lake that we can control right off the bat. And then that would be a sort of a phase 2 approach for the larger inlet. But that's the water that feeds the lake. So.
All right. Yeah. Just a question. Yeah.
Yep. Sure.
Thank you for that. So habitat and wildlife corridors. So we talked about just the importance of creating linkages to create those corridors, those natural corridors for habitat. Also good for can be an opportunity for people connections and focusing on ways to targeting land acquisition and other permanent protection other ways to do permanent protection. And we did also highlight trees and protection of trees as part of sort of a habitat, but also just the many benefits that trees offer in different ways, either street trees or also sort of the forested areas. So those sort of the 3 sort of discussion points in that section.
On page 5 on the top about the commission, the setback to wetlands. That's a Conservation Commission policy, not the town policy.
Okay.
And I think it could be changed to read something like there's a desire to formalize the policy into a bylaw, not necessarily change the setback, but to formalize it as a wetland bylaw under the commission.
Thank you for that correction.
And also the commission has a tree replacement policy that could be added a little further down in the discussion about trees.
Thank you. And then under the third area under natural resource protection is just sort of touching on the need for, protecting these resources related to resiliency and just linking it to climate impacts the town's hazard mitigation plan and the MVP process, and just making those links with that effort and the findings of that. And I do recognize, like, there may be some overlap with this particular topic and management needs, and if it, we can concentrate it in one area of this section, if that makes sense. Right now we have it kind of in two, but we're happy if structure kind of might read better a different way. We'd be interested in your ideas around that. Any comments on sort of talking about resilience with natural resource protection? The second piece of section 7 talks about community needs, and we organized it around new resources, new opportunities, new amenities that people had asked for. Safer connections with John, we can circle back on that one. Public communication and education, increasing accessibility and inclusivity, and then touching on environmental justice. So we'll start with the first. So this was more about new recreational opportunities that people talked about. And again, we pulled from the master plan survey. There was a lot of good information in there, just the different types of amenities that people were looking for. And then also touching a little bit on conservation as well. And
there's a mention.
Yep.
Sorry.
No, please go ahead, Judy.
New recreation facilities, including turf fields. Maybe they could also look at not only having turf fields, getting back to more grass fields.
Yes. So that is definitely a conversation that's being had in other communities too. Right. Yep. The new public spaces, again, that also sort of came from the master plan process, and people looking for pocket parks and finding opportunities in new space, in new places. So we kind of kept what was part of that process and just reiterated it here to kind of people seemed in our survey as we kind of it was reinforced that people are interested in that. So we added those spaces that were identified from the master plan process as well.
We have a few other ones that we've done transportation wise. So we're looking to do a couple downtown when the Envision project's built. So there's some discussion there. I don't think we had anything laid out for that little park that's across from the Galvin. I didn't see that one in there.
Okay.
Discussion point, that might be somewhere to add in. It's kind of like the trailhead for the Realtor Trail.
Okay.
That would probably make sense.
Okay. Yeah. Anything that and that's great, because a lot of, we want to make sure we're reinforcing those ideas.
Yeah, and then we're also looking at kind of a realignment of the Oak Green and what's the other one? Oak Green and Greenwood intersection, and that will create a small little pocket park there when we're done with that whole project. So we're going after grant money for that now, but that's already kind of gone through a little bit of a public process and whatnot too.
Could I say something?
Yes, please, John.
With regard to the survey, we had 147 individuals responding. And if we assume those were all adults and residents of Wakefield, you've basically connected with one person out of 140 adults that are residents in Wakefield. That's 0.75%. I think trying to read too much into this survey based on such a minuscule participation, I think is fundamentally flawed. I mean,
well, we're also looking at the other participation that was for the master plan. So we're trying to build on that effort as well.
Right.
We also met with the youth council and got their input on needs as well. I did
But-
not mention that, but
Part of the
Maybe as well.
problem with the survey is that the way the questions are asked, you're very likely to get the answers you want. In
and
other
we were
words,
trying, yep, I understand. We were trying to confirm what was, because similar, questions about open space needs and recreation needs were already asked for the master plan in visionary process. And so we didn't want to ask the same questions again of people. We wanted to make sure that we acknowledge that effort. So we were just trying to confirm and maybe get some more detail about what people were interested in parks and open space areas. So we did run up to, trying to do a survey, but after, a survey was already conducted on a similar topic, we didn't want to, like I said, ask the same questions or go through, have people feel like, I've already given you my information, my opinions and my needs for this. So we were trying to balance that when we did our survey.
And I'll say from my experience being involved in the last open space plan update, it was a very small participation survey wise as well. I don't think that's unusual. I mean, I've looked at other towns' open space surveys and it's also fairly low response, but usually where people tend to come out more is when the public forums are held. So I'm optimistic that will happen. And there've been a lot of conversations that have been had at different meetings. People expressed, they may not have necessarily completed the survey, but they've expressed their interest in certain areas.
And it is a valid point. We don't want to rely too much just on that survey. And so we're trying to use other projects that are happening like the master plan, but there's also the MVP process. There's also other committees that are doing work. So we're trying to, we recognize it's a very small number and we're not trying to rely too heavy on it. So, I think it just puts more of a, what we need to do on our next public event and, to get feedback on what this plan is, we really need to try to get more input and get people interested in giving us feedback on this.
And that's why I think it's important that you've spoken to several committees, Council on Aging, Environmental Sustainability, and got their input too. I think there's been a lot of outreach from all different avenues.
Yeah.
It just seems somewhat suspicious to me that the conclusions that you come up with are exactly the conclusions that the Mass Department of Transportation would like to have you come up with in order to impose this sort of connectivity. And there's a basic template that's going around all over Eastern Massachusetts, maybe Western Massachusetts too.
But
And
this isn't anything.
It just strikes me as very suspicious and a little bit manipulative or deceptive. I
wholeheartedly disagree with that. If you look back on prior open space plans, going back to the original plan in 1986, it's the same feeling that people had. They want connection to these open areas. They want trails. They want to be able to stay local to get some activity. So it's not a new edict by the state. It's what's been talked about since the open space plan has been in Wakefield.
Yeah, but leading the witness by organizing the question,
but that's built in. But that's
get
any
the answers
survey,
you want
any survey you take
is a very effective technique.
Right, but any survey you take is going to be geared in a certain way. And there was plenty of room for comment as well. If people had differing comments, they were free to express that, and they did in the survey.
And a survey of 0.75% of the residents is meaningless.
Well, you can't force people to take a survey. That's the other side of it. And that's why we're having these.
You can try other techniques.
So Haley has her hand up first and then Theo.
Yeah, I just wanted to comment kind of on that, again, doubling on what Judy said, you can't force the survey, and there were definitely many different ways that this was like thrown out and trying to get more and more engagement as much as possible. You're only going to get a certain amount. Secondly, as far as like the connectivity and everything like this is not only what I'm hearing from everyone I've known and talked to, it being something that we should strive towards, but also is something that environmentally that we need to be doing. We need to be having more opportunities for walking and biking and making it more accessible for everyone.
Theo, I saw your hand up. I didn't know if you still wanted to comment. If not, just give you that opportunity.
Yeah, no, thank you. Yeah, I appreciate John's comment because it is like right on its face. It's too small, like it looks like too small of a sample, but I think the separate outreach combined with what we learned from the Vision 2030 and what we will I think there will be a fair amount of overlap with the master plan because that builds a lot off of Vision 2030, which is very much Wakefield input. I think that's going to help. I think mute. I think that can help mute the impression that it's not a Wakefield based plan or whatever. I do also I think like the safe connections and all of that is a really nice dovetail to parts of the bike ped plan, which some of the opposition of the bike ped plan was really more about parking rather than walking and biking. So I think this helps sort of reorient around the open space and the connectivity, which is all positive.
I just want to add also real quick that there were also many opportunities before the survey went out to add comments or notes or adjust the way questions were written or worded or however you want to say it.
So there's, continued, if you want to continue to provide some editorial feedback, we can bring that to the group and discuss it as well for this section. Our third topic or third community needs was focused on public communication and education. I think there was not a lot of folks knew where different conservation areas were and just the need to sort of increase that knowledge and opportunities that people have to go to some of the conservation areas and also just kind of better understanding what are available at different facilities and where they can go. So just sort of increasing sort of the awareness and education about resources. And then just the Environmental Sustainability Commission and others were just, wanting to increase volunteerism to help maintain and keep the upkeep of some of these particularly conservation areas. So, and that can in turn lead to stewardship. So just sort of helping with the capacity to maintain places and just bringing in the residents to help do that where appropriate. Any feedback on public communication or education?
Was the Trail Steward program included in that section, or should we go past that?
Yep. Thank you, Judy. Yep,
that is up and running, and we have
Great.
several stewards, and there is a collaboration already with the Melrose Trail Stewards.
Great. So we can make that update that it has been developed.
Thank you.
So accessibility and inclusivity. So this kind of dovetails on the ADA work. And input from the Council on Aging, and once we meet with the Commission on Disabilities, to sort of integrate that into the needs piece and sort of direct people to that, the findings of that. And then, as Kelly mentioned, thinking, there are the ADA requirements, and those are very structural needs and are important to increase accessibility, but also thinking a little bit outside of the box, and people with other types of different abilities or cognitive abilities or sort of sensory things. So new playgrounds are coming out, and play spaces, and even spaces for adults that are more engaging for people for everyone, and just giving opportunities there. So just thinking about that. We mentioned the Braille Trail that's in Watertown. So just different ideas and thinking a little bit outside of the box, and if there are opportunities for that in Wakefield. And then, so any comments on that? I know that it's a little bit, so we're still finalizing that, but if there are any comments, we did get some feedback already from Bill on some things to follow up with. Right. And then lastly, environmental justice. So thinking about, the more vulnerable areas of town, the environmental justice identified areas of town, and their access to recreation or open space or conservation areas, and just thinking about the distribution of those resources, and are they, one example is, can they walk? Is it a 10 to 15 minute walk from their house, or do they have green space in their neighborhood? And just thinking about that, and where those opportunities can be increased in town.
Is there one environmental justice area, or there are two? Or did it change from the Foundry Street area to Audubon Road?
It changed, yeah.
Okay.
I've done a little research on this, unfortunately, because it affects some grants that we were going after, but
Mhm.
Audubon's the only one. I guess it changed with they published it based on the 2000 census, and then, or the 2010
2020.
census, the 2010 census, and then the updated one is based on the 2020. But
Yeah.
I think, but they put the environmental justice from the 2010 survey out in like 2018 or 2019 or something crazy like that. That's where the confusion came from.
Yeah, and then there was a quick update. Like the
exactly.
update happened, and I think a lot of communities saw, and they slightly updated the criteria that they used to apply slightly. So there were some shifts in different communities, saw some shifts. And I also note that there is a bit of a discussion. So you guys have the Wakefield Resilience Framework, which has criteria that you all use to evaluate different projects and initiatives. So just referencing that, because that, the town had developed that as a way to increase equity. So just started incorporating it into your open space and recreation plan as well.
And down in that area is Reedy Meadow, so maybe a heightened awareness that it's, because I imagine a lot of people who live down there do not know that it's there. It's a little trail, it's a big area for birding. So maybe the commission is having a speaker series, and one of the things we talked about was having a naturalist talk about birding and things like that. So maybe something like that could be included. An area that people may not have thought of, if it's, within walking distance to the apartment building that's right there. It could be something that they could start to take advantage of.
And those are the kinds of, having that at Reedy Meadows, so they, it brings people there.
Right.
And yeah, I think that's great. Yeah. And that's something that can be repeated in other spots,
Right.
other conservation areas in town. So the last piece of section 7 relates to municipal efforts. So just this, primarily comes, with public input, but we also talked with the different departments and commissions and what have you. So the first we organized it sort of by conservation areas, recreation areas, resilience and resource protection, and then again, community, public awareness and education, or just education awareness, I should say. And, just again, feedback if that makes sense. So the first just focusing on conservation areas and general upkeep of those. And Judy, you just said the Trail Steward program is started now. So that could help with that effort to maintain the trails and with their upkeep. Anything else related to conservation areas that you think might be an important need for that we might be missing?
I don't think so.
Recreation, we touched on just the continued partnerships that the department has and keeping that going. I know that they work a lot with the Boys and Girls Club. They're they share a facility and just maintaining that. They cover the cost of their programs. Oh, I'm sorry, Haley, I see your hand up.
Yes, I'm sorry. I had to
No.
disconnect my keyboard because of the cat.
Go
Just
ahead.
jumping back to conservation
Yes.
real quick. Maybe it falls on just under maintenance and upkeep, but are we talking at all about like invasive species management type stuff? Because it would be great to especially the knotweed has really been exploding the past few years, and I'm wondering if that's something that could be included in this if we're
Absolutely.
doing something.
I think I'm going to say yes.
I agree.
And thinking, is that, sort of site by site, or just kind of thinking about it holistically? Just maybe we could put some thoughts together and get your feedback on that. Because that ends up being an ongoing need. Great, thank you for that. Got my cheat sheet notes up here. So recreation, again, continued partnerships, and then just general maintenance and upkeep needs. So that's managed by the rec department, and then executed by DPW. And there's a clear line of communication. I think that their relationship works really well, and just sort of maintaining that. And Charlie, I see your hand up.
Yes. For the recreation sections, they now control the Albion Cultural Exchange building, and there's different programming there as well for arts and other types that's beyond just sports and fields. So that building and those activities can be added to this plan too, but the expansion and the oversight the recreation department has.
Mm-hmm. We can add that. We do, there is a focus on outdoor recreation for this plan, but
Okay.
we're happy to add it just because it falls on, the recreation department, and it's just additional programming that we're happy to include that. But yeah,
because the other reason I mentioned it, because earlier it says something about mental health programming and
True.
that kind of stuff that can be done.
Can be done there.
At another facility. Our
Yeah.
programming is going to involve those areas in the future.
Okay. Great, thank you. Great addition. Resiliency and resource protection. Again, so this kind of overlaps with the previous, so thinking about Is this repetitive? But just from the town's perspective and the town's needs to meet these challenges associated with protecting these natural resources for resiliency. So we have identified the stormwater management plan, a Vision Wakefield, and the MVP program summary, and outcomes of that, hazard mitigation plan and the master plan. They all touch on this particular topic. And I didn't know if there was anything in specific for, I guess, to-dos that might be an important to highlight, or it's much related to the nature-based solution work that you talked about, Bill. Just really, but is there something specific that we should be, regulations or policies or something that we should really be something that could be highlighted here?
I think you already had it though, right? Because you had did you have the overlay districts for the around the,
Yep.
for the watershed? So that, I think that was the
Okay.
only thing that I've heard as a main dialogue piece.
Okay. All right, just wanna. Great. So the last item we had under this section was talking about education awareness, and I think there was a need to sort of talk about so education. We took from the master plan, the visioning process was there was a desire to sort of do more education about the town's resiliency goals. So doing more education around that, which is very much linked to open space and recreation, open space planning, and this particular plan, also about doing more education across boards about the importance of natural resources and their protection, and then also talking about the CPA and just sort of educating the public about that and its benefits and sort of trying to move that needle as well.
The commission is having a ongoing speaker series starting probably in January. We'll have some from Mass Wildlife, a nationally known environmental artist who's going to talk about the floating wetlands. We've got a few things lined up already, which is going to be great. I hope.
Maybe a dumb question, but what is CPA?
Oh, so it is not a dumb question. So the Community Preservation Act. So it is a tool that, a portion of, there's a surcharge on your property taxes, and that money gets put aside. And it can be used to acquire open space for conservation or recreational programming. It also can be used for affordable housing, historic preservation, so has multiple uses. It might be worth, I don't think we did in here, there is a website that's really great, has a lot of good information and examples of projects that it could be used for, that would be helpful. But a lot of communities, and I think there is a state, or at the Commonwealth level, there's a state fund that also sort of contributes to that as well. So, and that money can be used locally. So there'd be a committee that would get established and applications get submitted, and that committee reviews them. They do set up like goals and objectives, so they have guidance on how they make their decisions, but it becomes a dedicated funding source for open space and recreational resources, in addition to other like housing and historic resources protection as well. Has multiple uses. Thank you for that, Haley. I'll make a note to add a link in there for the final, so readers can find out more information. We do have a piece about regional needs, so we'll just touch on, the state's it's a SCORP, so the state comprehensive outdoor recreation plan. So this document should be consistent with that. So we'll highlight, the major goals of that plan and where there's consistency. And then MAPC, any regional planning needs that they identify. We, just sort of how Wakefield's goals align with that and needs align with that. That's just another requirement that we'll do, but we'll work on that section as well. So any comments? Again, we're welcome to, if you wanted to just type, provide additional feedback. We'll continue to take that. We can look at the calendar for when we would want to set a date for comments on that. If we looked at perhaps the 13th, that's about 2 weeks. Does that seem reasonable for any feedback on those sections?
I think so.
Just sort of putting out the deadline there. Great. One of the other, so great. So section 7, one of the other two sections I just wanted to touch on. So section 6 is sort of the community vision for open space and recreational planning. And I think I'm going back to the draft that we had distributed. We had the community vision that was written in the 2005 to 2010 plan. So we had that in the draft material. And we sort of went through all of the other documents that we had been pulling from that were helping us, that had similar, that maybe had goals that were related to open space or recreational resources. So we kind of pulled some of those to help give you some ideas, because to help sort of, if that vision still rang true, or if you had other ideas, and just sort of trying to help, do you still feel that rings true? And so Judy and Rebecca had done some started to think about that, and drafted a statement. So I put it on a slide here, and I took some sort of formatting liberties. There was a list of sort of what they had hoped that the vision had, a list of goals in there. So I sort of broke them out individually to sort of highlight them. But Judy and Rebecca worked on this, and I thought it was, great that they took an initiative and sort of sharing it with you all. We can sort of put it out there to kind of discuss. So I guess I could read it for you all. So the community's open space and recreation vision is to protect and enhance Wakefield's natural spaces, neighborhood character, and open space assets to ensure accessibility and inclusivity for all. To accomplish this vision, the goal of the OSRP is to maintain and improve the current open space and recreational parcels, acquire new parcels to expand both passive and recreational opportunities, as well as to protect natural resources, identify opportunities to create connections between open space lands, recreational facilities, and destination areas in town, foster social cohesion through promotion of public spaces, evaluate and pursue actions that support climate resiliency goals, and promote environmental equity and justice. This plan serves as a resource and tool for planning, maintaining, and improving conservation lands, trails, wildlife habitat, lakes and streams, green infrastructure, parks, playing fields, and other recreational areas. It's an essential guide for preserving the quality of Wakefield. I thought that was I think you covered a lot. I don't know if anyone had any initial thoughts on that, or, I think I'll just open it up to anyone who might want to offer some feedback or discussion. thoughts?
Thank you to Judy and Rebecca.
Welcome.
Yeah, I would agree. A nice, yeah. That's
And we can
Re-
sort of
reads well,
digest this.
really.
Yeah.
really terrific.
I think I would just offer, if you don't mind, I would offer just one minor suggestion. So you mentioned neighborhood character in that first sentence. I'm wondering if something more focused on recreation might be, if you'd consider something around that sort of natural landscapes, recreation, opportunities, or recreation facility, something more focused on recreation, and then and open space assets. I don't know if neighborhood character, I don't know if that, I don't know, it just maybe sounds a little, might not fit into the scheme of open space and recreation. I don't know if anyone else had a thought on that.
I think changing it to recreational opportunities is fine.
Strikes me as a really good edit as well.
We'll keep this. That's great. Thank you. And we'll put that in our next draft, and folks, maybe we can send this around and folks can sort of, if they felt like they wanted to sit with it for a little bit, they could do that. But yeah, thank you for taking that effort and putting that on paper. So that's sort of section 6. So thinking about a vision and a statement of goals. And one of the things that we have learned from with DCS, we used to just copy our goals that we had used in our section 8, our goals and objectives section, and put those in this piece, but they are looking for a more broader perspective, which I think this really speaks to. And with that, I would also, want to share, Judy also had crafted some goals, which we also can sort of distribute and let folks think about them. And I think if I'm not overstepping, Judy, I think so. We do have, we sort of think about the needs that we just talked about in section 7. And so what is the structure that we're going to use to organize the actions that are coming, that we'd like to put on in a plan? And these are the goals that could help with that structure. And if we wanted to, we have about, I guess, a half an hour, but I don't know if we wanted to take some time to go through these. I'm also interested in some action items as well, that we can start pulling together an action plan, and maybe these might help us sort of think about some of those. So between the needs piece and sort of these goals that you've drafted, and that's, because that's our next step. And material to prepare for you would be that action plan, that section 9. So section 8 and section 9. So you've sort of given us a little bit of a leg here. We've gotten some things that are ongoing. We've heard from you all tonight, and what's we've seen in some of the current plans that are in progress. But maybe if we kind of walk through these briefly, and just sort of, if there are some actions that might fit in there that we want to consider, you'd like us to sort of think about and putting into an action plan. So the first is promote the awareness and use of Wakefield's open spaces, parks, and recreational facilities through signage, wayfinding, and mapping. So I don't know if Judy wanted to sort of speak to what what was the thought behind that? You
Well,
know,
I think
what would be the outcome of that?
it would, part of it was the overarching comments from the survey, which were, I didn't know where these spaces were located. So there are wayfinding kiosks throughout town, so maybe there could be some mapping there. We talked about the trail signage with a QR code, and maybe that could link to the overall town map that could show you other areas as well. I mean, I think it's gonna be more
Yeah.
comprehensive. You know, it could be on the website, different things, just to capture different people. And then with the mapping, that can be on several mapping sites, trail sites.
Yeah, I think we've been, you know, the need for a map or maps has come up a bit through this process. So that's a good point about, you know, is it a trail map or an interactive map that's online that can help increase awareness?
Yeah, and wayfinding, I think they've started in town, and I think it would help to direct people to different areas of town, or you know, promote business that way. If you're in one space and you see, you know, a half a mile away, you can go to a restaurant downtown, or then you can play pickleball. You know, it's kind of connecting, doing a full loop of assets in the town, maybe. How one connects to the other.
Yep, understood. Yes, more comprehensive use of that wayfinding
Right.
system that's been set up. Does anyone have any feedback or comments on that, those ideas, or to add to them?
Like to add quickly, maybe adding a whole new level of difficulty to it, but I'm curious about the possibility within those maps of adding some sort of like seeing like where water's flowing and where your water is coming from, which would add like an educational piece to them following these routes and seeing what's near them and how it's connected to them.
I feel like I'm trying to think, there might be some actual like EPA apps that do that, if I'm not mistaken. But that's interesting. That's an interest. So just give that kind of leans on sort of the educational awareness of environmental issues and I'm not familiar with, I'm trying to just think some examples of what that might be. I'll have to think about that one.
Maybe it could be incorporated in some of the signage at like a conservation area. This, like at Reedy Meadow, where does that water come from? Where does it flow out to? Like a quick little,
So more at particular points.
right,
Yep. So sort of educational signage. I guess
Right.
that's what, yeah. Yeah. Anyone else have some comments or and I feel like we can send these back out to everyone to give you some time with them. I recognize it, but you just saw them today, right now.
I
So
do have a,
go,
I do have a
Theo. Yeah,
question.
go for it.
Goal 3 seems to be part of goal 2, right? I mean, is goal 3 more of actions?
Yep, I can see that. So goal 2, we're talking about the distribution of opportunities. Yep, and there are some actions in here. So we can sort of suss those out. And then thinking about the goal 3, it's a similar yeah, how do you implement it? And so Judy was thinking about, do we do it by voting district?
Yeah.
Another way. Yep. So yeah,
no.
so I'm happy to play with them myself as well. Starting to think how they fit together. But they do tie in. You know, sometimes we also think about the radius as well of spaces, and But that, people can, as that's usually as the bird flies, so to speak. But really, how safe is it to walk to a place? How safe is it to bike? Do they have to have a car? So you just think about different age groups who aren't driving, how are they getting to different places? So walking and biking tends to be sort of that impetus as well. But yeah, we could sort of work those two together. So go ahead, please.
Yeah, I have another, like, this is more of a question about, do we have sort of any vision for where some of these pocket parks might end up, or do we have anticipation of some opportunities?
Yep. So in the master plan visioning process, people identified areas where they thought they saw some opportunities for pocket parks. And then Bill said that he's sort of identifying some additional, with the intersection was being reorganized. So there is some work, and we are kind of taking from the master plan piece of it too on some specific places. I think I might still have that. Can just take a quick look at so those, so we wanted to reinforce. So people were looking, in downtown, Audubon Road near Edgewater Park. So there were some specific locations that people either knew amenities or pocket park. People were already thinking about that from that visioning process. So we wanted to make sure that we carried that forward. And they can continue to work on that. And I don't know if Erin, Erin, I was just going to check in with Erin with the master plan process where that was at, but I can circle back with her.
Yeah, I mean, the real short answer to that is we're in the iterative editing process, so that's
the fun part.
Yeah, it's gonna might take a little more time than desired, but yeah, that's where it sits.
Okay, great. Yeah, so I mean, I think we'll also want to check in with that to make sure we're consistent. Not that we have anything that might be outrageous. But it might be nice to just do a quick check-in. So goal 4 kind of builds on accessibility, universal access, and those types of opportunities. I think that's a very broad goal. I think that is a good, it gives room for, to add to that when it comes to objectives and actions. Goal 5, provide services and programs to all ages and abilities, and provide access to buildings and structures without barriers, increase community offerings that are accessible and inclusive for all. So I think we could maybe work those two together, or goal 5 could be sort of a little bit more specific, maybe an objective, but definitely sort of builds on that as well. We kind of talked a little bit about that already. You can pull from the ADA. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. So goal 4 is really more about like the physical spaces, and goal 5 is more programming, right? More a little bit.
Yeah. We're interpreting Judy's writing. It's helpful to talk it through. Just to put it out there. That's kind of sometimes how I work too. But yeah, so they are related. Somehow they're talking about access and being inclusive. I think goal 5 talks about different age groups, making sure that, we've got that spectrum. Goal 6, improve coordination among departments, committees, and local organizations toward a common goal. Yep, common goals for open space. So that's about working internally, but also you need partners. You need to work with others as well outside of outside of town. So that's always a good goal. We've got public awareness, so we can sort of check this. I'll do, so why don't, maybe, Judy, we could send this out along with the vision
That'd be great.
statement, and then kind of get people's thoughts on it, and we'll do some as well. But I just, I appreciate not starting from nothing, or not starting from scratch, but what your thoughts are, is always, it's great to start from there. I'm gonna stop sharing. So that's really all that I had. I think those were some big things we wanted to talk about today. I think our next steps are to sort of make some changes. We can give you all until the 13th to sort of give us some nitty gritty, further feedback on that piece of section 7. If you want to give feedback on that visionary statement, I guess the larger goal, the vision goal statement, and then those individual goals, we'll start to work on this, the action plan, and sort of put together some of that. I'm gonna remind myself where we are at some things. I'm wondering if there are any interest in revisiting the action plan from the older, the 2005 to 2010 plan. I mean, it is significantly, time has passed. And I feel like you probably have either accomplished a lot of those, conditions have changed, so maybe that's not something
I
we
would think there
want.
might be a couple ongoing, but yeah, I don't.
Yeah, okay, that's fair. So I think our effort is to sort of draft an action plan. We can start with these goals, and any feedback that we might get. We did talk about, from the needs, we did sort of put some information about what we think could address those needs, so we could sort of put those in a more of an action oriented way with the timeline. So the action plan has our time frame, who would be responsible, sort of the lead, and support for that particular action, and then potential funding sources. So we'll start to pull that all together, and it might be worth sort of a working session around that, with you all, to make sure that it's complete, and we've had some good input on it. I think that would probably be our next item that we would want to get public feedback on, and we can talk, when we get together, when we're looking at that, how can we generate more interest to get more feedback on it. Like John said, we didn't get a whole lot of feedback on the survey, but what can we do to get, maybe people are more interested in reacting to something that we say we're going to do. Maybe there might be more interest in that. That can also be the case. That'll be something that we should strive for, is to get better input on that. Are there thoughts or feedback, direction for us, considerations?
I think the draft looks great. You've encapsulated everything, from all the sources that we have in Wakefield. I think it's really impressive.
Thank you. Thanks. We'll continue to work.
Yeah.
Continue to work. Yeah, and your feedback on that, it is just a first cut, so please feel free. So we're targeting the 13th for that. All right.
Do we want to have parts of it in QR codes, sort of on signs around the lake, so as people walk around, they're like, "Oh, I can learn."
I mean, I have seen, just like this, just vegetation, could be some history. I mean, I think that the information boards or kiosk or what have you, I think they have come a long way. And people have been using them very creatively. I think to your point, Jude, about integrating it in an existing wayfinding thing that's throughout town. I've seen communities do that with, historic, identifying historic resources, parks, even, conservation areas. I think that it is a good platform. You've already got it set up. People recognize it. It's got a theme. So I think that's something that can be built on. Yeah.
I'm really I would love some constructive criticism for the planning board to think about how we can help coordinate and like move goal 6 along. So, John and others so I'll take, any thoughts, ideas. So
We have worked in communities, a community that used to have what they would call an all boards meeting, maybe like I'm trying to remember if they did it annually or maybe semi-annually. And I mean, you kind of run into like quorums and things like that, but it just sort of gave everyone an opportunity to talk with the other committees and understand what their goals were. We actually had worked with the town on their master plan, and that was a way we did one of those meetings, and we made sure that every committee, every table had a representative from all the different town committees. It was quite interesting. But it was a way, because it's difficult for committees to cross. Their paths don't usually cross a lot. So that was just something, but I can sort of go back to that and see how that was sort of implemented. But yeah, that is a tough one. But I think it's important. Yeah, we'll make note about that one. All right. I think we're good.
So, thank you.
Thank you, everyone. I really appreciate all of your comments and your feedback. Yeah, very appreciative.
Yeah.
Thank you.
May I ask, do we know our next meeting time date?
We don't. Do we want to, I'm happy to, if we wanted to put one on the calendar since we're all here. That might be helpful for us to sort of have a target. Wondering if did we want to meet just before Thanksgiving and sort of.
It's fine with me.
So, because after that, I think people the bandwidth gets
Right.
even lower. And look at the week of the 12th, November 12th.
If we want to keep it at Wednesdays, we could do the 15th.
Okay. Does that work for everyone? We would do 6:30 again. I'm just
Yeah.
going to put it right in my calendar. Great.
Perfect. And we'll put together the agenda and send it.
Yep. That gives us a target. And then we can sort of talk about, and I think maybe if we do our last sort of public meeting just after the first of the year, and that could be just sort of, the action plan, try to, like I said, get some feedback, and maybe we think about multiple ways in which we do that. If it's, in person, but also online, maybe the survey is just not a good tool. Just thinking about other ways in which we can get feedback on it. Great. Well, thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Have a great rest of your evening.